Hey guys, so today I'm going to work on the FroKnowsPhoto Raw edit number 59. I've been incredibly busy. It's Thursday and I'm barely getting to it. Work has been kind of stressful, but I really wanted to get this this video done because there's a couple of things I want to do to this image that I think are different than some of the other images that I've been doing, or at least it shows a couple of new things, which I think will be kind of fun. So let's get into it. So I opened up the file. It opens up in Camera Raw. I'm using Photoshop. So it opens up in Camera Raw, and I'm going to do some basic, I like to enable my lens profile correction. It gets rid of any vignetting and any barrel distortion. I think it works really well. I use it pretty much all the time unless I click it and it looks really bad. I don't use it. But the other thing is, I was thinking of changing the white balance, but it's either going to be, I think that's a little too warm for a starting point in Photoshop, because I can always warm it up once I'm in Photoshop. If I was in Lightroom, I probably would warm it up using the white balance, but since I'm in Photoshop, I'm actually going to leave it quite neutral, and I can always do whatever I want to do with it inside of Photoshop. So I'm debating between as shot and daylight, and I think I'm going to go with daylight because I'm going to try to do a little bit of a different look for this. I think he nailed the exposure pretty right on, so I don't want to add any exposure. I'm actually probably not going to add too much in Camera Raw, because I mean it's shot almost perfect, I would say. So I'm just going to open it like that, holding down the Shift key. It will open it up as a smart object, so you can always go back to it. All right, so here we go. The first thing I want to do is I do want to crop it, mostly because of this. Actually, you know what? I'm not going to crop it. I'm going to take this strap off. But just as a way of working, I tend to do things in a sequence. So I'll do skin, then I'll go to eyes, then I'll go to lips, and last I'll do hair, and then I'll do overall effects or anything I want to do overall. So that's just kind of the process I like to work on with portraits. It's always worked for me, so I'm going to start off with the skin and then move on to the rest of the stuff. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a folder, and I'm going to call this folder PSD Adjustments. And that basically is so that at the end, everything's all my adjustments are going to be in a folder and I can turn them off and on. Next, I'm going to make a new folder called Skin and put it inside of that Photoshop Adjustments. Alright, so first thing I want to do is get rid of this strap. So, actually, I'm going to crop it. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to crop just a bit about there. Hold on. Crop it just about, I think I'm just going to crop it around there. Yeah, I kind of like that. Just a little bit of a crop, and then I'm going to get rid of this. So next thing I'm going to do is, I've seen some people on the forums, and it's a fine way of doing it. It's cloning, you know, taking a clone, and it works perfect, but there's more margin for splotchiness, I guess you could call it. I like, when I'm going to do something like this, I actually like to select an area of skin that's kind of clean, and right next to it, like that. And if you hit Command J on that layer, Command J, and I'm going to call this Skin Cover Strap. Basically what I did with Command J basically makes a copy of that selection. See how I did that? And I'm just going to move that down, and somewhere around there, it looks pretty good. Just going to make it a little bit bigger. You don't want to go too much bigger because it'll change the pixel density and stuff. But now what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a mask, and I'm going to use my brush, a really high brush. If you hold down, I learned this new trick. If you hold down Control Option and you scroll your mouse to the right, it makes your brush bigger. If you scroll to the left, it makes your brush smaller. If you go up, it makes your brush softer. If you go down, it makes your brush harder. That's actually really cool. It's a great little trick. Somebody on the forums saw one of my videos and mentioned that, and I was like, wow, that's going to change my workflow. I'm having issues getting used to it just because I've been using the bracket keys for years and years and years, but I'm trying my best to get used to it because I really want to start using that. So what I'm doing is I'm just putting the skin that I cloned, that I basically clipped out, and just kind of masking out the edges. See, so you don't have these rough edges. And then I'll go in here and then kind of mask out in here, and something like that. And I can already tell that I don't like this lump that it left right here, so that's going to get, I'm going to clone that down. And she also has some hairs all around this because This is an incredibly sharp image, and she's got a lot of that caked on makeup that everybody's been talking about in the forums that we're going to have to get rid of. I'm going to have to soften up some of the skin, and that'll be fun to get to. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make a new layer. I'm going to call it shoulder edge clone. And basically, and here I'm going to use my clone tool, and I'm basically just going to clone using the gray, what's it going on? Okay. Using this gray color as my selection point, I'm just going to clone all of this stuff out. So I'm just going to go slow and make sure you do a good job of cloning. It's just a matter of taking your time and really kind of going in there and cloning that out. And let's see, so okay, and here I'm going to reshape this. I'm going to basically clone it down just a tad, you know, just to reshape that shoulder so that there's no lump right there. It's more of a straight shape, and it won't be as distracting. And that looks pretty good. So already you can see what I did there, you know. I think I like that. I think that looks pretty good. And next, since I'm still working on skin, I'm going to use my healing brush, and I'm going to heal the skin. Healing skin. Okay, so using my healing brush, I'm just going to go in here and find anything that needs to be healed, any spots that I feel can be healed. And some of these wrinkles and even some of this hair can be kind of healed or cloned or whatever you want to use. And some of those like spots, just looking for spots that need work. And when I use a healing brush, I just look for spots. It's not going to be an overall cleaning, because that's what I'm going to do once I'm going to make a makeup layer and blur her out a little bit and work on her skin. But the healing brush I just use for spots, lines, you know, blemishes, zits, anything that I feel needs to be kind of cleaned out. Okay, so let's see. Do I like that? I don't know. Oops. I'm not sure if I like that, but the makeup layer will clean all that off. Okay, so I think that, you know, I'm just going to get rid of some of these other spots here. I'm just going to make a real clean image. Since this is a studio portrait, when I do environmental portraits or stuff like that, I will kind of not clean them up so much, not retouch them as much, because they need to look a little more real. But this is a studio portrait, and studio portraits I like to almost make a little over retouch. Not really, I don't over retouch too much, but just like to make it a lot cleaner, just because it's, you know, studio portrait. Okay, so my next layer is going to be what I call a makeup layer. And a makeup layer, I just use a brush. I use a pretty big brush and a pretty soft brush. And what I do is I just select skin tone colors. I'm going to start with the skin down here. So I'll select the skin tone color. Ooh, that's way too much. Flow at 5%. And to change your flow, if you click this button off, right, this is your airbrush button. If you turn it off and you hit your number pad, let's say you hit the 5, it'll change your opacity. See how it's changing? 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, you know. If you hit 0, it goes back to 100. If you have your airbrush on and you hit the same keys, like 6, 9, 8, 2, it changes the flow. Now the flow is the amount it comes out as, okay? So I use really low flows, 5% all the time. Select color, and I'm just gonna kind of paint in. And like I said, like I always say, don't worry about overflow, because you can always mask it out. So I'm just gonna paint in makeup, basically. And again, don't worry about going too far with your makeup, because I always opacitize it anyways. See, like you can totally see a difference now if I were to turn it off and on. And then what I'll do is I'll probably lower the opacity on it once I'm done, but I gotta do the whole face first. So, all right, so let's get into it. So, okay, so I'm gonna add some makeup, and again, make sure you select colors in the range where they're at. Okay, so you know, like this color, select in that area. This color, select in that area. And try to like make sure you don't add light where there's no light, unless you're trying to change the shape of her face a little bit, because it will change the shape of her face. All right, so let's see. This is looking pretty good. And again, I tend to overspray because I'll bring it back with my opacity. So here we go. Just little by little, I'm building up a makeup layer. And her eyes have this kind of, I'm going to make sure I keep this eyeshadow that she has. And already it's softening up her skin a little bit. We're going to have to do some more softening by blurring some stuff just because it's so... There's so much makeup on there and it's showing up so clearly. So, alright, so I put my makeup layer and now I'm going to lower my opacity. I usually go around the 65 so that I can still see some of the texture from behind, but it's softening it up. Okay, so now I make a mask, take my brush, hit 0 to make my flow 100%, and I can go in to where I think I might have where I sprayed overflow basically. Anywhere where there shouldn't be makeup is what I call overflow. So I'm just going back and just cleaning it off. Anything that I might have, like right here, I know I hit a lot. So here, I'm just going to go in and make sure I mask out all of this overflow. That looks pretty good. Okay, so that's a pretty good starting point. Like I said, we're gonna have to blur her out a little bit because she's too sharp, I think. But maybe not. Let me think about this for a second. She's actually looking pretty okay. I'm gonna try to blur her out just a tad. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna duplicate this layer, rasterize it because it was a smart object, and I'm gonna put it into my skin thing. And I'm going to use my blur tool. Actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go filter, blur, Gaussian blur, and I'm going to blur it just a little bit, like that. And already you can see a difference in the skin, but obviously that blurred the whole thing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a mask, and I'm going to fill it with black. So right now this is not showing up, right? This mask is covering everything. But I'm going to take this mask and I'm going to use my brush with the B key, gets you back to the brush. And then I'm going to change my background color with the X key so that white is in the foreground, and I'm going to paint. And I'm a little worried that I've blurred it too much. I definitely blurred it too much. I don't like the way this is doing. It's too much. And I don't like it. I'm going to throw that away. Give me a second here. Okay, so that technique of blurring it didn't actually work, so I got to come up with a new technique. I mean, it could work. I kind of didn't like the way it was looking, and I might have blurred it a little too much. So I think I'm going to try just duplicating my makeup layer and lowering the opacity on that. Let's see how that looks. Yeah, see that it's kind of working. I'm still seeing a little bit too much texture, but it's just because the image is so sharp. I don't want to do too much more there. I'm going to mask out some of this blotchy healing up here. I'm just going to let my makeup layer work on that. Okay, so that works. Alright, so I think... let me see. I mean, I think she's looking good skin-wise. I think that's enough. I think I'm going to leave it there just because it looks good. I'm a little worried that it's a little too sharp and too much texture in here, but it's just kind of borderline, so I'm just going to leave it for now. And next, I'm going to work on... Okay, so that's the skin. Next, I'm going to make a new layer called eyes. That's the next thing I usually work on, is the eyes. Okay, so next I'm going to work on the eyes, and so I made a folder called eyes. And the first thing I want to do with the eyes, there's a couple of things I want to do with the eyes. I'm going to remove some of the red, some of these red veins in here, just a little, not all of them because you want to keep some in there. And her what is this? The pupil is really humongous on her eye, so I'm going to try to make them a little smaller so we have a little bit more of the color. Or her iris is humongous. I'm going to make the iris a little smaller so that the pupil shows a little bit more color. But the first thing I'm going to do is work on those veins, and I'm just going to heal veins. Healing eye veins. And again, I'm going to take my healing brush and make it small, and I'm just going to slowly remove some of just these big ones. And you want to go slow so you don't have like big gaps. And then of course I'm going to add a little bit of color in there so that I can kind of, what am I trying to say? I'm trying to say so that there's no splotchiness. There's no little areas that are, cloned areas. You don't want to show that you cloned it. So sometimes adding just a little bit of paint, airbrush paint, white in there will clean it up. And that looks pretty good there. Okay, so now this one, I'm just cleaning, healing. See, this one's got a little bit more blotchiness, but it's okay because I'm going to add some paint. Okay, so that's healing eye veins. I thought I already wrote that down. sorry, next layer is painting eye whites. So again, I'm going to use my brush, and I'm going to go to 5% flow, really low flow, and I'm just going to select a color and just add a little bit of a brush, just a little paint brush in there, just just flowing in some real fine white in there. You can kind of see what I did, see? And I totally went a little too much overflow, so I'm going to bring it over here and mask out that overflow. Same thing that I did with the skin makeup. It's basically the same thing here, and I'm going to opacitize it as well. But I want to do a little bit work on this side. I'm going to take a color, add a little bit of a spray, and just kind of clean up her eye whites a little bit like that. And you got to be very careful because they'll start to look really fake if you make them too white. So that's why I always bring my opacity back down. And same with this one, you might want to bring the opacity back down. Because nobody's eyes are completely white. Nobody has perfect eyes, right? So, and you know, you just don't want to see that. You don't want your eyes to recognize that it's fake. Okay. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make these irises smaller. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to select my lasso tool. I'm going to go down to my main layer that has all the stuff on it. And I'm going to make a very rough selection around her eye like this. Right? And I'm going to hit Command-J, which is copy onto new layer. So it'll take this selection that I made and copy it onto a new layer. You'll see over here when I hit Command-J. See, I made a new layer, and if I move it, basically that's it. All right, so now I'm going to move it up to my eye folder, and I'm going to call it, what is it, right eye, pupil, iris change. Iris change. Okay, so now I'm going to take my Command-T function, which is the transform, and I'm going to make it just a little smaller. And you want to be careful in how small you make it. You know, that looks about right. I could probably make it just a little smaller. Just a little bit. You gotta be careful. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make a mask, and with a soft brush, I'm gonna brush the edges so that there's no harsh line there. There's a smooth transition. And she's got some interesting circle lines in her eyes, which are kind of very interesting. So you just gotta be careful with that kind of stuff. But for the time being, I don't really mind those circle lines. So I'm just making sure that there's no hard edges. And now when we look back, see her eye, there's more green in it, and we can add some more enhancements to it. And if you want, you can go in here, and then in a new folder, you can go in here, and with a clone tool, if you really want to get delicate, you can remove, just very delicately, I'm sorry, make a new layer, very delicately remove that ring. You don't really have to, but it's good to show just, you got to be very careful to make sure you're working kind of at the right angles and stuff. But see how I got rid of that ring, and I'm going to get rid of the other one too, just because it's kind of strange actually. Okay, so see, that looks good. That looks nice and clean. Now let's do the same thing with the other one. I'm going to go back to my main layer, select my lasso tool. This one's interesting because it's hiding behind here, so I'm going to make a selection all the way around here like this. And I'm going to add a little bit just because, you know, and I'm going to hit Command-J. And again, it made a copy. Move that up to here. Oh, sorry, I need to name this. Okay, this is cloning right eye pupil. Okay, this is now going to be my left eye iris change. Okay, so now I'm going to take that, hit Command-T as transform, and make it just a little smaller. And then I'm going to move it so that this line matches up with this line, so that it feels like it's together, and then I'm going to mask it up. But I just got to go back and make sure it's the right size and it matches the other eye. So that's about right, I think. I think that looks about right. And then you just got to move it around until you match it. That looks actually a little small. I'm going to go back and make it a little bigger again. Okay, so that looks about right. Yeah, I'm going to leave it at that. Okay, so again, I'm going to make a mask, use my brush tool, and brush out the edge so that there's no hard edge there. It's nice and soft edge, transitioning from one layer to the other. Same thing with the skin portion of the new layer. So now you can't even tell. Okay, cool. Now, one thing I did want to do with these eyes, I actually want to change the color of the eyes. And there's a reason. I want to make her have blue eyes and really red lips, just as a change, and I'm going to enhance her hair a little bit. So how would we do that? Well, I like curves. So I'm going to use a curve. And I'm going to go into my blue channel. And I'm going to pump the blue by lifting this up. And I'm going to go into the green channel. I'm going to remove some green. Where's my red channel? I'm going to remove some red. And my blue channel. I'm going to add a little bit more blue, and it's not working. But I'm going to make a mask to mask everything out, and then I'm going to paint in with white just over the eye. And I think I went too far. It's going to look like she's got alien eyes, but I can always go back. Okay, so there is my curve. As a curve, I filled my curve channel with black, and now I'm painting white just where I want it to affect the eye. Same with this side. Okay, and that looks good. Okay, now I'm going to zoom out, and actually it doesn't look too bad. It might be a little too much blue, but in this case it's not too bad actually. I guess I didn't go as far as I thought I did. And that's as far as I'm going to go with the eyes for this one. So we made them smaller, we clean them up, and we change the color. So this is going to be a long video, guys, because we still got the lips and the hair to do, and we're already at 20-something minutes. But hope people will like it. Okay, so the next layer I'm going to make is going to be the lips. I'm going to work on the lips next. And on the lips, I'm just going to do a quick color change, not much else. So I'm going to make a curve, and I'm going to bump the red. And you can see that there's a lot of kind of pinkish in there, and that's because there's blue in there. I'm going to remove some of the blue and probably remove some of the green, and it should look a little more red. Okay, so now that curve affects everything, obviously, so I'm going to fill the mask of the curve with black using Command Delete, fills to background. And alright, so now that I've added that black mask, I'm going to go into my brush, select white as my foreground, and I'm going to paint white where I want that mask to show up. And you'll see me do this over and over and over and over again. It's because I love curves. Curves is, to me, one of the most powerful tools in Photoshop. You can do almost anything with curves. You can contrast, you can change colors, you can add fill light, you can add shadows. I mean, curves, once you learn to use curves really well, become very, very powerful. So let me just paint in the curves. And I went way too far with the red. So we'll be pulling it back, but I'm just going to make this mask now that it's too far and I can see it, and then we'll come back and bring it back. I kind of went like fluorescent almost, but that's okay. That's the great thing about it, is that since I'm using a mask, I can always go back and change that original curve, right? So, and I'll show you what I mean by that. So there's my mask. Basically, I just added some seriously pink lipstick to her. But basically, see, now that that mask is done, right? So now I've added this mask, I can go back to here, to the curve, and I can go to my red, and I can lower the red a little bit, and go to my green, and probably go move it around until I find the right spot. Same with the blue. Maybe I have to move there. And that's looking kind of okay, I guess. It's looking a little orange to me, and I'm trying to find the right amount of everything. There we go. That looks a little more... See, that looks a little more real. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to, again, lower the opacity of this curve so that it's not so in your face, so it's not so pronounced. But that definitely made a big change. And I'm going to go back into my curve and my brush with white, and I'm going to add 5% flow. And I'm just going to add a little bit to these edges so that they're not so it's not such a hard kind of transition between the fake color that I added and the actual real color. So, you know, I'm just kind of painting it in to make the edge look a little cleaner, that's actually, I'm making it less sharp. Too sharp looks fake, less sharp looks better. Okay, so in this case anyways. So there we go. That is the lips. I like it. So I'm kind of liking where this is going. This is kind of going real interesting, kind of blue eyes, red lips. Now, next I'm going to work on the hair. Make a new layer. I call it hair. What do I want to do with the hair? I want to add a little bit of a red tint to the color. So again, I'm going to use curves. And this one might be a little harder because hair is a lot tougher to work with. But I'm going to add a little red, just a teeny little bit of red. I just wanted to have just a teeny little bit of red. And And I'm probably going to remove a little green and a little blue. Removing blue adds yellow, so that's kind of where I want. Okay, so now, again, I'm going to fill this mask with black using Command Delete. I'm going to take my brush, and I'm on white, and in this case, I'm going to make it really big. And I'm going to paint in, and again, I went too far with my curve, but I'll bring it back. But you can already see how easy this method is for changing hair color. If you wanted to give somebody completely blonde hair, done. Purple hair, done. Any color you want. This makes it nice and easy. Now, it gets kind of complicated in here. If I was going to spend a lot of time on this, I would go in here and really make sure I do a good job masking this. But for this tutorial, I'm just going to kind of do it quickly. You shouldn't even be able to tell too much because I'm going to... Now, here's the thing. When I was adding white to add the red, but you can always go back and paint black, and it'll remove what you added in that mask. So you can go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and that's how you kind of clean up these images so that you don't have all this weird red overflow. Okay. So that's looking pretty good. I think I missed a spot over here. So as for my mask goes, it's looking pretty good. I'm going to go back and change the color a little bit because I think I went too red. Again, I tend to do that a lot. I tend to go overboard because I can always come back. So it's just an easier way for me to work. Some people like to work kind of more the way it's going to end up looking. Okay, so X key makes me go to black. Oops. And I'm going to remove some of the red that I added where I don't want red, like in her cheek and in her face and stuff. Oh, and you know what I forgot to do with the skin? I forgot to work on her makeup, but I'll come back to do that because I forgot. So that's kind of cool. Change your eye color, change your hair color to red. Actually, I guess I didn't go as far as I thought I did now that I go back and look at it. So I kind of like the color that it ended up being, so I'm going to leave it. One other thing I want to do to her hair is... Okay, so I'm going to call this hair color. I'm going to make a new layer, and I'm going to call it Hair Highlights. And this time, I spelled highlights way wrong. Hair Highlights. All right, okay. I'm going to change that layer blending mode here to overlay. And I'm going to take a brush, and with white, default X, with white, I'm just going to paint, real small flow, I'm going to paint a little bit of, when you put something on overlay and you paint white, it lightens that thing up way fast, so I'm just adding a little bit of white highlights, where she's already got highlights, but I'm just enhancing kind of the highlights she's already got. And it just gives her hair a little bit of shine, a little bit of life, a little bit of, it just makes it look a little cooler, a little better, I think. So there, that's kind of what I did. It just gave her hair a little shine, a little life. That's what I call it. I just, you know, it's personal preference. You go in and you paint wherever you feel like. There's really no right or wrong as long as it doesn't look fake. And that's kind of what I'm doing. Okay, so what I want to go back to my skin, and I kind of forgot to do her eyeshadow. So I'm going to go back to her skin, and I'm going to make a new layer, and I'm going to call it eyeshadow. Eyeshadow. And I'm going to select the color of her eyeshadow, and I'm just going to slowly paint it in. This might not work. I might have to go do it. I might have to use a curve, but I just want to try it this way, and because I'm going to change it to overlay. Yeah, see, that totally worked. Okay, so changing to overlay, and her eyeshadow now is working. I'm adding quite a bit of it here, and I'm going to lower the opacity and then make a mask and paint off some of the stuff that I went too far with black. Yeah, and I just added a little bit of eyeshadow back in. You want to make sure you don't go too purpley because it'll look like a bruise. And that's it. I think I'm going to lower the opacity of that just a little bit more, maybe to 50%. And I think that's it. I think I'm going to stop it here. It's already running a little long. Actually, one thing I do want to show you guys, after I do all my layers like this, I make another folder, and I call that folder Effects. And what I'll do is, this is where I do overall effects. So I'm going to do a little bit of a warmth with a gradient map, and I'm going to use an orangey gradient map, like probably this one. And I'm going to put it on overlay and lower the opacity to like 5%. And I'm not even sure you'll be able to see this on the YouTube, but it just added a little warmth overall. And then my last layer, make a new layer. I'm going to call it noise. And I'm going to, you're on that layer and hit Shift Delete. Shift Delete brings up your fill dialog box. And I'm going to select in here the 50% gray. I'm going to fill it. It's going to go to 50% gray. I'm going to change my blending mode to overlay. So at 50% gray on overlay basically disappears. There's no, if I were to make it darker, it would go darker. If I make it lighter, it would go lighter. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Filter, Noise, Add Noise, and I'm going to select, I'm going to select like 5%. And let me look at it. At 5% might be too much. I'm going to go to 4%. And that'll just kind of bring the whole, it'll be really hard to see on YouTube, but it brings the whole thing up. You know, I do want to kind of, I think I might want to sharpen her eyes. Even though she's really sharp, I'm just going to sharpen her eyes just a little bit. And I think the best way to do this is going to be to, right above my hair, I'm going to turn off my effects. I'm going to hit Command Shift, Control Option Command E. And that didn't do anything. Oh, Shift Option Command E. There we go. Shift Option Command E. So you hold down Shift Option Command and hit the letter E, and that basically makes a composite layer of everything you've done up to that point and puts it right there. And I'm going to take that. I'm going to go to Filter, Other, High Pass. I'm going to do a 2% high pass for this one, and I'm going to put it on overlay. And that just sharpens everything, but you don't want to sharpen everything here because you don't want to sharpen that skin that we spent so much time getting rid of that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to call this high pass sharpen. I'm going to make a mask. Again, like everything, I'm going to make a mask and I'm going to fill it with black. So that's not affecting anything. I'm going to take my brush and with white, and I'm going to paint over that mask in the areas that I want to sharpen. So I want her eyes to be sharp. So, I mean, if you look at that, it just kind of sharpened that area of her eye. So I want this one to be sharp as well. I like sharp hair, so her eyebrows will get sharpened. And I'm going to zoom back and I'm going to sharpen her hair. I'm not sharpening the background at all because I don't want the, I want that, you know, bokeh, that blur in the background. So I'm just sharpening her hair. And I'm not sharpening her skin because I don't want her skin texture to come back through. So I sharpened her eyes and I sharpened her hair. And you might even be able to sharpen her lips. You might even be able to get away with it. It'll make them look a little more wet, which is hot and sexy. Okay, so there we go. I think that, you know what? I'm going to sharpen this earring just because it'll really make it pop. And I think that's where I'm going to stop, guys, because I think that really helped. And I usually put that in my effects, and I'm going to turn on my effects. So that adds the noise and the color, and that's going to be my final image, guys. Let me show you guys a before and after. So this is before and after. Before and after. Now let me zoom in a little bit to their face and do it before and after again. Before, after. So I think we really cleaned her up quite a bit. Made her look really beautiful. And I hope you guys like it. Subscribe. This is a long one, but I think we went over some good stuff. And see you next time. All right.